The following is one in a series of authentication video studies presented by John Resnikoff and University Archives.
I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
John F. Kennedy was America's 35th president. The challenges faced and accomplishments earned during his tragically brief 1,000 days in office have made authentically signed Kennedy photos, letters, and other items from his life among the most sought after of all presidential collectibles.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
While many JFK signature studies have been done, this is the first video study to exhibit both authentic and non-authentic examples from our vast reference collection for the benefit of public education and insight. As you may be aware, a genuine JFK letter or autograph can cost upwards of $2,000. But while the current marketplace is loaded with JFK material, by our estimates, 80% of these items are not authentic. As a result, collectors need to protect themselves against the unfortunate abundance of Kennedy's secretarial signatures and forgeries. Two valuable reference books that can help you in this effort are written by Charles Hamilton and Paul Carr. Hamilton was long considered the dean of autographs. He was also a friend and mentor to John Resnikoff. Another useful reference is Paul Carr's Notebook Study series. Both of these resources can greatly benefit collectors of all experience levels. We'll begin our study with several examples of original Kennedy letters, photographs, and documents having signatures that are not authentic. This is an example of what may be JFK's first secretarial signature, penned as a young congressman. By this time, Kennedy had already authored Why England Slept and survived World War II as the hero of PT 109. Young Congressman Kennedy used secretaries to sign most of his mail, and this letter is a good example. In this signature, the J appears similar to oval. Also, the letter Y is very tiny. These two characteristics alone are definitive tells of a JFK secretarial signature. This original bumper sticker from Kennedy's 1952 campaign is not even a secretarial example, but an out-and-out forgery. One key clue is the modern-looking ink. While a senator between 1953 and 1960, Kennedy's secretaries signed an even greater proportion of his mail. These four letters illustrate Kennedy's most common proxy, referred to as Secretary 3 by Charles Hamilton. Called the stuttering signature, Secretary 3 writes K-E-N-N, then stops and stutters, and writes E-D, and stops and stutters again, and writes the Y. Notice also on three examples how the connection between the O and the H is a soft loop, not a hard angle. This characteristic will be discussed later as well when we discuss authentic JFK signatures. Kennedy also used printed signatures during his Senate years. These often fool inexperienced collectors and inexperienced dealers. A tip-off to a printed signature is signature ink that closely matches the ink of a letter's text, appearing as if the signature and type were printed at the same time. During the late 50s, Senator Kennedy signed even fewer of his own letters, as we see in this extremely variant Secretary 3 example. This assistant's attempt at signing Kennedy's last name doesn't even come close to authentic examples. By the time JFK began his run for president, the infamous autopen or robot signature came into largely full-time use. Here are two prime examples of robot pattern 4D. A good way to identify an autopen is to transfer a copy of the suspect's signature to a sheet of transparency, Then lay the transparency over a known auto pen. Presto! If the overlay matches the auto pen exactly, then the suspect is an auto pen signature, as no two handwritten examples can ever match exactly. The ever-popular JFK had many requests for signed photographs. These two examples present deceiving printed signatures that require proper magnification to detect. This example is ink on paper and appears to be a clear auto pen. Notice how shaky the signature is, likely caused by someone bumping into the auto pen machine. Genuine JFK signed photos can sell for $4,000 to $5,000, but these examples are virtually worthless. Here we see a poor forgery added to what appears to be a recently printed photo. By Inauguration Day 1961, President Kennedy had more requests for autographs than ever before, and his stable of talented secretaries happily obliged. These deceiving fakes are identified as Secretary 1 and show up quite frequently. Notice how the J leans right into the H and no O is formed. The middle initial F also appears to be an X, with the telltale loop at the bottom of the vertical line. The last name penned in the Secretary 1 example represents among the best of Kennedy's secretarial signatures uncovered. Here is a rare hand-signed copy of Kennedy's infamous inaugural speech.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
If authentic, such a rarity could fetch as much as $50,000. Unfortunately, this is a superb secretarial forgery. Fully handwritten quotes penned by Kennedy on White House stationery have sold for upwards of $300,000. The offer of brilliant forgeries like this to unsuspecting and inexperienced Kennedy collectors could spell financial disaster. The same is true of this signed special inaugural edition of Kennedy's book Profiles in Courage, published in 1955. If authentic, this would be a bargain at any price below $10,000. Unfortunately, this edition was penned by Secretary 1. Here is a signed White House letter displaying a suspicious typeface. We also note an apparent secretarial signature that we haven't seen before. In this case, Kennedy's signature is far too small to be authentic. In fact, we believe the entire letter is a fake, surprisingly forged on genuine White House stationery. This photo contains poorly executed non-secretarial forgeries of both JFK and Vice President Lyndon Johnson. Certainly among the most difficult Kennedy items to obtain are authentically signed White House cards. Very few genuine examples appear to exist. Most, like this early secretarial, are quite deceiving to the untrained eye. Here is another example of the dreaded Secretary 1. Notice the several secretarial tells discussed previously: the leaning J, the absent O, and the middle initial F with that telltale loop at the bottom of the vertical line. We close part 1 of this study with an example of a printed White House facsimile card. These cards are fairly easy to disprove given that the title, President of the United States of America, is clearly printed with the same ink as Kennedy's facsimile signature. Be sure to access Part 2 of this JFK authentication study, providing rare, genuine examples of John F. Kennedy's signature and writing.